Okay, hello. Welcome to another edition of Esoteric Book Club. We were talking prior to recording on necromancy and cunning folk and crossing the abyss to heal others. So, what a good transition into the first or the chapter of this, one of the chapters of this week, which is called Reading. Yeah, I don't know. Let's go over our overall impressions of the chapter and then I guess of both of them, right? I don't know what we did last time, but yeah, and takeaways maybe on a broad scale. I really enjoyed cold reading. I thought it was fun. I didn't realize where it was going until the end, which was cool. So it was like his other, I feel like he is kind of sandwiching light stories and heavy stories one after the other. So it's kind of nice that we read two and one was a little bit more light and playful, in a creepy way, and the second one was like really complex and gnarly. Which what I will say, it's probably not it was a little cringy for me, but I still enjoyed the reading. I didn't finish either, so I got to do that. But yeah, for the most part, it was just hard for me in the beginning to get into it, and then I really got into it kind of, and then I was like, okay, this is a little like it made me uncomfortable. But the first one was very fun and definitely like, yeah, it was just cool how again it felt like it was set a really long time ago, but then it was current. So that was a really like cool, surprising kind of way to read it for me. Cody, what were your impressions of these chapters?
Yeah, cold reading was cool. It was like an interesting like twist on kind of a classic ghost story almost. Um, it was yeah, some interesting ideas in it. The second story I thought was really funny. I laughed a lot, and it was like just really it's that cheekiness that he has. It's like making this really like complex, um, like abstract, totally abstract thing into something that like is coherent and quite funny. Like translating this thing into words. I thought that he's like kind of masterful at doing that. So I really appreciated that. So but yeah, they're both kind of funny stories and just again and like I think there's like some hidden depth there that can be plumbed in both of them. But right now I'm not quite sure what it is. Because like as it is with this stuff, I kind of have to like I feel like it's good to talk about it because I think we do get some pull up some stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, last meeting was totally that.
Yeah.
And Britannia, how were your impressions of the chapters?
So yeah, like I didn't finish the second one, which I'm really bummed about because it was like one of those ones where you're like don't want to stop reading. But I was like literally having narcolepsy last night, like falling asleep to it. It was very cute. Haven't done that in a while where you're like holding the book and you're like falling asleep. It was so cute. But I love the characterization in both stories. I think like the commentary on in the first story, like cold reading, just the commentary of the intention and just spirituality and like pseudo spirituality and like just like, so much of it because it's like the guy didn't realize like it's like yeah he was doing magic that whole time and like that he was like magic, but he was like kind of discounting the reality of the situation like the whole time, and that's why he was like missing it. And he was so checked into himself and stuff like that. And I don't know, it was just his encountering with the other, just like I don't know, there were so many layers to it, and like the commentary on each layer by like the interaction of the different types of people and the environment. Yeah, I don't know, very interesting. I love his writing. It's great. And I love how, like you said, how like there's one plot that like floats on the surface, but then there's like this depth of plot beneath. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so let's get into cold reading, classic ghost story. But yeah, with like a pseudo, well, what he thought was like a pseudo science, like spiritual healer, and then kind of I mean, I love how he describes the magic of being, you know, making people feel better, but then exploiting that is also like a really gnarly kind of thing. Like I was definitely reading it like very critical of some people that, you know, do this type of work. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's very upsetting to know that that occurs for me. Um, yeah, but I mean, but at the same time, like he's making people feel a lot better. So there is like a little bit of like truth to that. And, you know, what you need to feel better is on you, you know? So,
Yeah,
Well, he
I
put a lot of work into it too. Like he would like snoop pretty hard into people. So it was like he really was like getting to know people and what they needed and then like giving them a service. Like I know it sounds really weird, but I was trying to do both where I'm like I have this like inert like feeling of like this is awful and it's hard to read this, from this perspective, but then it was interesting to hear like how somebody could actually help people that need that, and kind of having an open mind with it.
yeah. I mean, he's a villain. I think he's the villain of the story. He's like
Oh,
his
for sure.
blatant classism and stuff like later. And then
mhm.
like
Yeah.
um and I liked yeah, and that and he's like trying to excuse himself. Oh, but I make people feel better. He's like trying to explain himself kind of thing. And it's like you get that sense that he's doing that constantly in his head. So he's kind of like always fake and trying to like he wants to believe, but so he's trying to like figure ways to actually believe, but then he doesn't actually believe in any magic stuff really. Like, does he really? Like, but he wants to, and then he's like comes up against like this guy who's like who doesn't believe at all, who's like the total atheist, who's actually very much more like in good faith, the atheist, and like, but then he's like judging him for all his like science fiction books and it's the way he's living and so it's like um so it's like it was an interesting play on that because on like what is like real spirituality versus like kind of like fake false, like, and it's kind of a dig at like new age stuff too, like
Yes.
all the new age angels and stuff he has and the things he does and
Totally.
like preying on the gullible kind of like falsely spiritual um and like Alan Moore, I think, like, and that's the type of spirituality that I vibe with, is like the stuff that doesn't proclaim absolute truth, that's like that still accepts, that still loves science. And I'm sure like Alan Moore is a sympathizer of like the atheist, like, because that's perfectly valid um you know viewpoint.
Yeah.
um
I feel like Alan Moore has a really good way of writing about like the darkness in people, you know, in general. Like I do feel like I know more of potentially Alan Moore's either perspectives or the things that he struggles with, like through how he portrays some of the characterization. I mean, this is my first, you know, reading of his, and I could definitely see like similarities in the tone of the characterization between the stories a little bit. I mean, especially these two chapters together, I feel like, with
What do you
the
feel like the tone difference was, or like what it says about his like view on those types of people?
I mean, I feel like Alan Moore struggles himself with like egoism a little, you know, and like I think he has a good handle on it probably. But I mean, it seems like from all of the characters that like each story has like a undertone of like strong presence and like being very like glorified in their presence. Like someone's like the best at what they do in something.
It's very
yeah,
grandiose, yeah. And very
yeah,
Grandiose.
hyperbole too. Like each character is a hyperbole and the circumstance they're in is like a hyperbole too. It's
Yeah.
very
right.
extreme.
So maybe this is I mean, I think we'll know more by the end of the book, but maybe something we could keep in mind is like Alan Moore's like doing his own shadow work with all the different sides of his egoic nature that he wants to kind of unfold here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's like his way of like transmuting like the darkness of the world, because there's something about watching TV shows like Breaking Bad where like a seemingly horrible person is somebody that's so humanized that you empathize with them and like almost root for them in their weird dark ways. And I feel like these characters aren't that, but he like has like this beautiful distinction between like, you know, what you think you know and what is actually like occurring, you know, where he like definitely suspends your disbelief and, you know, takes you into these very like cerebral circumstances and characters. And I think he's definitely, like you said, doing shadow work with himself a lot. And I think he's doing it with like the world and the fate of man. And I don't know. I think there's always that grapple of like good and evil in all of us. And like he does that a lot with his characters, where it's like you see both in them, but you're not, it's like you don't feel bad for them because you know, like they are what they are. And there's, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but he does such a good job with the
Yeah.
characters
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
that dichotomy within them.
totally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in this story, do you think the ghost was real, or was it just somebody just like totally turning the tables on him,
I mean, I
playing
think it
playing?
was. I
Because
think it was because, but I mean, again, this is a fiction writing, but I mean, I mean, I've seen some entities of various factors. I mean, but they've been all in my head, you know, but it's also like in the dimensional space that's not really like clear in this one. So, I mean, whether
I've
that,
seen physical shit in this physical realm, like that I think it's, yeah, I think it was real
I think
because
because
I've
he
seen
opened the door. So like again, like I read it once through and then I looked back because I was like, oh yeah, you know, him recalling things from the the guy's past that he couldn't have known about, right? The phrase of the Fanta or whatever, like, do you want a Fanta or something? And that's what his dad said that broke the spell of the ghost that.
oh right, right, that's
hmm
right.
And then how he was like distracting,
Yeah.
like, oh, I need to go check the windows because who knows if
Yeah.
someone broke in here, you know, and he like literally couldn't open the door. Like that's what it was. It's like I can walk through this door, but I can't turn the handle.
But
So
it's still kind of ironic that like this ghost of this atheist dude would like go and fuck with him, you know,
It was
go
the
and
hatred.
take
That's why
it.
it's like the
Yeah,
dark characterization, like the fact that like see the brother was like, oh, it's not worth it. You know, I don't want to do this, and like I don't think my brother would like it. It's like I think that's why there was like this like it's ironic because two guys that would be the last two people on this planet to believe in that are the ones that it's happening to.
yeah,
And the fact that like there's like that hatred of like who each other is, like they both hate each other, like they're
yeah.
like polar opposites in a way, and there's something there.
There's like it's like a karmic attachment, the karmic like yeah,
It's weird, it's like they're foils for each other but in like a very deep way.
yeah.
totally.
That's true. That's yeah. That's a good. That's like a theme of the whole story. That's like that's good.
And it's weird
This
because like he has to like invite him in too, like when he comes to his house and he like has to invite him in. I feel like that's like part of the whole like inviting in like the other.
mhm.
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
it's two like strongly held beliefs, like egoic, strongly held beliefs, like coming into contact and then like creating some suffering, you know, like, and that's whereas like I think there's like, and that's again like I think throughout the book, throughout the stories, there's this kind of like overall, and I get this sense from Alan Moore is like don't hold your beliefs so strong, like have a sense of, and like there's a sense of humor about it, like don't take yourself so damn seriously. That's kind of that's a lot of his work, I think. If you read like The Watchmen too, it's like again
Ooh,
it's
the
like
Watchmen.
hyperbole of these characters who are just like totally crazy in their own living their own like egoic world, totally
Well, yeah,
fucking
like
shit
V for
up.
Vendetta's like that, where it's like
Yeah.
he's doing like crazy things for like what he sees as a righteous reason, but where do you draw the line, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when do you turn into the villain and
Yeah.
all that?
Yeah. V for Vendetta is so good. That's my favorite.
It's my favorite book slash movie of his.
Yeah. Both of them are really good. Yeah. So there's this like, so yeah, he's kind of portraying this world where like you don't have to be either an atheist or you don't have to be hardline atheist or hardline like spiritualist. You can kind of like live in this kind of like be able to be in the world and be like scientific and like and understand relationships between things and how they work and be able to like trust science, but then you can also like explore your imagination and explore the etheric plane and the imaginal planes and be able to like come up with like it's like a whole nother it's like you can have the layers of existence. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, you know.
I think that
That's the kind of magic that I like that I dig too is like
I agree. I think the truth lies inherently in between both of those polarities, you know? Like
yeah
it is and isn't that, you know, on both ends. So like that's very
yeah
middle path of us.
yeah
You know. And I do like, yeah, how Brittany said, or like how we were talking about like these two worlds colliding and being like a reflection. Yeah, like what you said, like a foil, but yeah, like a weird mirror of each other, you know, and opposites.
hmm
And it was fun. It was like, oh, fun. This is a fun book. I don't know. I mean, at first I'm like,
yeah
oh, it's such an ass, but then it was like, oh, fun. I mean, that's how the next story started for me too. I'm like, God. I mean, it started really, you know, beautiful, but like super complex. And I was a little overwhelmed. And I'm like, this guy is such an ass, you know?
Well, and it's fun
the
when
pet
like the jerks in the story get punked by the plot. You're just like, ah, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, like you're a jerk. You deserve like this like crazy spiritual weirdness to happen because it's like the thing that you've been saying you are, you're gonna become because like you're bringing it on yourself, like how it happened in the first story. There's like this weird yeah,
Yeah. How
yeah.
did
like
it
full
end?
circle with things.
Do you want to, I mean, yeah, can you like, how did it end?
It
Oh,
ended
with
with
like,
him just go ahead.
oh no, you go.
Well, it ended with him just kind of realizing that what's going on actually, like, oh shit, this is real, and I'm fucked. That was my sense.
Okay. So like he
And
made,
then feeling like, oh shit, I really like this, my job, like taking advantage of people, and it's finally like the karmic return, you know.
okay.
He's
Well, I think it's like the strike, the fear in you, like the fear of others confronted, but he's also like realizing that like there is a reality behind his lies.
yeah,
And that now that he's like connected to that moving forward, he'll never be like a pseudo guy again. I mean, technically, like, and maybe he'll like do things differently because like now he actually like knows what he's fucking with. You know what I mean?
yeah. But maybe the ghost is gonna kill him. I don't know.
I know
There's a
that's what I was
ghost in
like. Is it? Yeah. Well,
What's
it's
that?
the ghost of the brother is upstairs.
Hey, wait, did I
He's the
read
one that's been
one?
he's the one that's been talking to him the whole time.
No, I know. We're talking about the next story now, aren't we?
Oh,
Did I just jump in?
I thought we were still just finishing off this story.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. That was
Which
mine.
no,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I got confused. No, I was talking about the first story still. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
you know,
Yeah, no, the brother upstairs for
yeah.
sure.
So yeah, what is the pan what is it? The pan what is the Pemperule. And he proclaims it strongly, his identity as the Pamperule.
Okay, so this is the second story.
Yeah. We can,
Yeah, so okay,
yeah.
let's talk about that now, right? The improbability complex high energy state.
Yeah. The whole story taking place within a fermosecond.
Shit, right? I know.
And
It's like,
it's like the moment of the Big Bang, basically. Is that's the idea? And then
I mean,
so it's like everything is possible. A Boltzmann brains form, create identities, and then they fuck each other's brains out, and then they go to war, and everybody dies.
oh, okay, so
And
that's
then
how it
and
ended.
then hydrogen happens, and um that begins entropy. That's the
That's
that's
the
the
ending.
story. That's as far as that's what I got out of it.
I didn't read the
That
war
is the
part.
yeah, that is the ending. That's the ending. It's like hydrogen happens at the very end, and that
Okay.
was like that's that's the beginning of the end. So it's like the high improbably complex high energy state is like that state of like the very beginning of the Big Bang where everything is happening at once. So that's the whole idea. The Pan rule has this idea that everything is getting better, like everything's gonna get better, and but then ultimately like, and that's from his perspective that's kind of true, but then ultimately everything
Also,
then well, yeah, everything becomes something that then is, and then entropy starts, and that's the beginning of the end of the universe. It's the beginning of the universe, but it's the beginning of the end.
okay, yeah, it's the beginning of like uncertainty, right?
Yeah,
And outward movement.
yeah. Whereas everything is possible in this high energy state, and everything is happening at kind of at once, but then things then time and matter happens, and then like the universe
So
becomes
it's
so that it
almost like the
becomes
singularity expanding outward in a moment.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
don't even know if it was expanding at this point, is kind of like it was just that moment, right? Or maybe it was expanding out. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well,
Lost-
it was like well, yeah, it was like everything. Yeah, I don't know if there was expansion or not. It was just these things the Pamperl and the other
Glenn,
brains. Yeah, Glenn. Oh, you probably didn't read further where there's more of them.
they were just
Oh, you
meeting,
just got that. Yeah.
and they were
Then
indoctrinated.
they form a university out of donuts. They build
Oh.
the university out of donuts.
Okay, that's why
It's
you were
totally
laughing.
absurd.
I don't
Yeah.
think I got it. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
laughing. I was just like,
Oh,
oh,
there's so many funny, absurd things. Like when they have sex and stuff, it's like totally absurd. It's funny. It's like,
yeah,
and the way he describes it,
yeah. Well, for me, it was like primordial soup levels. Like I thought it was, and
yeah,
that's how I read it, was like if it was on Earth and it was just the soup of life that all of this was happening in. But I do think you're right. It's more like thought concept, because that's why I was getting confused on all of the like, yeah, like I would have been really confused on the donut university, because it would have been like, well, is this in the soup of like the world, of like the world on Earth? Like I don't know.
yeah. And I'd never heard of Boltzmann brains before, or I had maybe heard the concept, but like only in passing. But serendipitously, I was watching Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, which is a great show, by the way. I love Star Trek.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
I love Star
and
Trek
they're
too.
like talking about Boltzmann brains in that show, like right after I was reading this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What is it?
What is a
Like I don't
Boltzmann brain?
understand. What's
It's
both?
like a spontaneously arising brain, like consciousness out of like nothingness, or out of, it's like,
So it's what the
well,
Pamperdane and Glenn were, right?
yeah, it's what Pam Pearl and Glenn were. As the were Boltzmann brains. He explains it. There's an actual explanation at the beginning of the chapter.
Is it something that exists actually, or is it a thought
No,
concept,
it's a thought. Um
thought experiment?
a thought experiment. Yeah.
That's how it was described, huh?
I mean, I think I could read the quote.
Okay.
Wait, hold
I think a lot of this went over my head though. Which I mean, I don't like that. I mean, I was reading,
Yeah,
I got it, but I'm like, I think I was trying to read too fast, maybe. And I really didn't like the Pamper Rules like freaking tone, you know? I'm like, you need to be a nicer person. Like, it's just not okay. And I also found it very like hard to believe that like the first being in consciousness would have this attitude about meeting other, you know? Like, I don't know.
yeah. It's a little bit pessimistic
Yeah.
of
And that's
that. Yeah.
and that's what really like after reading the parts that I read of this, I was like, oh, maybe this is like that's where I got to like, okay, Alan Moore is maybe like working through some shit with this writing, you know, which I
Yeah.
think is like that's all of his writing, kind of in a great way, like in such a like enlightening way for people. Okay.
But it but I mean I think it describes samsara and karma pretty well. Like when you do have like suddenly individuated entities, they would kind of attach to their identity and then like become suspicious or like interact with other in various like nefarious ways. I
Hmm.
think
Well, I
that's
think it was
kind of a
like a
lot of what it's
commentary on like
saying.
human nature and that it's more just like the nature of things. Like once they realize that they're other, then like it builds up all these differences and ways of like attacking or dismissing or diminishing somebody or yourself. Like I don't know. Whereas like if you remember the oneness, like you'll tend to be more compassionate or, tend to think about other people a little more and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I guess that is true because humans are born in community environments like
Well,
that.
you're born a part of another person. You're born attached to your mom.
Hmm.
And like in your gestational period when you're like not quite yet your own thing. So
Hmm.
maybe it's even like the birthing process of like souls.
Well, he wasn't attached to anything, potentially, like nobody was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like imagining like being the first birth of life in like that way where you have like no concept of other and then there becomes an other.
Yeah.
Like how mind blowing,
Yeah.
how world shattering,
Yeah, just
how would you feel
constant
about it? Like so interesting.
scream.
And what I thought where this was story was going was that it was like the formation of the demiurge, but it wasn't really
That's what I thought
in
too.
in kind of the Neoplatonic sense of like there's like an initial like energetic explosion, which is the like initial oneness or of God or like the true divinity, but then demiurge is like the creation that is the creator then. But it wasn't that because it ended with them all dying. The Big Bang is all there was, really, I guess.
Pun intended.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's the yeah. Good point. That's
Right?
totally. But here's the quote about what a Boltzmann brain actually is.
Okay.
The Boltzmann brain, sentient life extemporaneously formed from subatomic happenstance, inevitable consequence of a non-finite universe, as per the thought experiment of 19th century physicist and theoretician Ludwig Boltzmann,
Hmm.
was in that fast-breeding and surprisingly well-regimented paradise before statistics, no less probable than any other outcome. Nonetheless, from the brain's own barely congealed perspective, its existence was an unbelievable surprise. See, that's interesting. It's like this thing that just happens because like everything is possible, and of course it would happen. But then once it is something, it's like, whoa, there's something, I'm something, and then it's like, yeah, and then that
It thinks about
pulls out
thinking
from there.
and being.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the
exactly.
self-awareness of being.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I thought it was a really elegant story how to like explain this, like be able to even like talk about this incredibly complex subject in a fun and funny way that's that's not really being non-scientific, but it, you know, it's just kind of a fun thought experiment, and it's not meant to be truth. It's not, it's, but it's like still a experiment that makes you kind of think and then think about the nature of identity and separateness and other and self and all that in a really like precise like, and getting to like, I think it is it is the primordial, it is the true primordial soup. It is that initial instance from which everything is formed. It's the most primordial space of all.
It's hard because when I imagine that space, I imagine different type of reactions from the actual like plot line of it. Like I do agree.
Right.
Like, but maybe that's like, I mean, I don't want to even gender that, but maybe like a female's perspective, but also like the way that like these certain like emotions are described are very like black and white
Removed.
and removed and like, yeah, very like, what is it like to have an ego? And that's kind of it, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, a little bit more dimension in that space of like complexity might have been like nuances in that. Like, I just felt like bad for Glenn the whole time. And like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, it was like, I felt like, I
Yeah, it
also
was silly.
reminded of Crowley. Who was Crowley's, I always forget Crowley's, assistant's name, or the one that leaked and wrote all of the documents.
Um, uh,
I could look
Israel
regarding.
Regardi.
I,
Yeah.
for some reason, like when they first, I mean, before they started having sex all the time, but I was really reminded of their like their dynamic in the get-go. So I don't know if there's truth of that. That's just like what came to mind as I was reading, was like, oh, this feels like Crowley and Regardi's dynamic for some reason.
Well, it's culty. It's like it's this cult of like the Panperul is like the initial cult leader because he's the oldest and he dupes and he dupes Glenn right away
Mm-hmm.
and then dupes everybody else. But then so at the end, Glenn, you should finish it, but Glenn actually like comes up with a counter theory, and
Oh,
that's what starts the war between all of them. So
oh,
the Panperul's theory is that everything is getting better and basically getting better for him. But then Glenn's like, Glenn asked the question, for whom is everything getting better? And that was what started Glenn thinking of the idea that actually the universe is not getting better and it's actually going to reach a state of untropy, he calls it. Not entropy, but like ultimate like dissolution of everything, which is kind of what ultimately is like when the Big Bang ultimately happens. That is what's kind of where it's kind of going towards relative to this high energy state where everything is happening, every possibility and probability.
hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad Glenn stuck it
Yeah.
there.
So there was that like kind of hope and rebelliousness in that too.
Hmm.
Like somebody would actually stand up to the power.
Which has been a theme of the week lately for me. So there we go. That's good. Good to be reminded of that. I'll finish reading it tonight then.
But yeah, I get there's like, but see, yeah, could be all kinds of other possibilities because every possibility and probability is happening. But this is a story about this. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really liked it, and it was really hard to stop reading. So
There's not really any good stopping point in it. It's just all kind of happening.
yeah. I mean, again, and he writes, I like each story is written slightly differently, which is nice too. Like it's good to read like a different style in each one. And this was read very like very scientific, but yeah, you're right, with undertones of humor that were like from a scientist kind of humor. Like I imagine my like really, really
Mhm.
smart, nerdy friends being like, oh, funny, you know, like because I
Yeah.
get it, you know, but it's like I think I would if I read it a little bit slower, but
Yeah,
um
it's nerd humor for sure.
it's nerd humor, which is cute, you know, and that's different than his prior writings, you know.
Yeah.
And it's fast. It's very like all happening
Yeah. Yeah.
and like keep up kind of vibes.
I wonder how
Yeah.
hard it is for him to write his plots because he has like, you know, does he like write one layer and then write like another layer, you know, when he's like, you know, you have to brainstorm all this stuff and put it down on paper. And it's like he has definitely like a lot of magic infused into it. So it must be kind of fun, but hard to like make a narrative like
Yeah.
the way he
Yeah.
wants it because he is so intricate in such a short amount of time. Like even like the first story is just like it was really short, but you're like, yo, like that could have been a whole movie.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world he
Yeah.
can
He's
is beautiful.
yeah, it's kind of impressive, like a comic writer is able to like be such a great writer too. His
That was one of
vocabulary
the,
and stuff is
yeah, in college, I remember writing about him, and one of the things I focused on was his ability to create worlds
Hmm.
mm-hmm.
in a very small amount of time. And it's not even by necessarily telling you about the world, like here's what it looks like and all this stuff. It's like he gives you a sense of the world through the characters and through the like, I don't know, it's like you feel is like pushed down or like you feel like the darkness or you feel like the hope or you know you feel like the environment around the characters and like the world that they live in and it's so interesting because it really makes you wonder like how much of a byproduct you are of your world and you can like step back out of it and be like am I you know doing myself justice and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like yeah. Very few writers have made me or fiction writers have made me think the way he does. Like in giving perspectives that I hadn't really considered and stuff, which I value a lot because I value perspective. I like knowing lots of different perspectives.
And this book is especially good for that because you get like bite-sized perspectives in different stories. So I think that's really fun about this book in particular.
Yeah,
Agreed.
for sure.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this seems like a short session, but that's okay, you know, if we have any like final thoughts or quotes or whatever.
I think we covered it pretty well.
I know. I think we're pretty concise, huh?
So the very last sentence of the chapter is somewhere hydrogen was happening and it was all downhill from there. I think And I think maybe if you like know a little bit more about the Big Bang and the beginning of the universe, that might land a little better.
Yeah.
And then only like I only like vaguely remember how all that entropy and
So
everything came about.
hydrogen's the reason why there's life. So hydrogen is like bonding agent, which created water, which created like single celled organisms. Like I mean, hydrogen is like the reason why we exist. Like
Right.
and all the things around us exist, like the earth and you know all that. So it's so funny because it's like it was like
I
saying, oh, and then life exists and it was all downhill from there, basically. And so it's like that's his way of saying that. It's funny.
wasn't wasn't hydrogen the first element though? It's just the first element. It's the first
Yeah,
element that
and it's the
came to
building block of
be.
all the other things.
Yeah.
Is it
That's
Because
why
hard?
it's
it's like
just
so
the
funny.
yeah.
It's like it was saying it's like the beginning of the end as soon as it starts. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a cheeky way of like
Yeah.
viewing time and everything. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
hydrogen
Clever.
combustible? Highly combustible?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's also
It's
that.
funny because it's highly bondable too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was written for a proper nerd, which is great.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it. Proper. All right, I will stop the recording.